Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. The importance of critique. Many people are afraid of it, or back away from it, or resent it, or treat people who engage in critique as people who are impolite, or rude, or discourteous. To academics, critique is what we want. We look for critique. That same fascination or positive view of critique exists among most communists as well. Or if it does not, it should. Critique is the way that we grow. Without critique, we become idle. We don't expand ourselves over new horizons. And the only way that we can really grow is by constantly challenging ourselves and by subjecting ourselves to challenges from others. That is why I said in my previous episode that I was so disappointed in that person who was a very close friend, because we used to be friendly to each other, and we were also very critical of each other. We have never agreed on everything. We agreed on some things, but not on everything, and that was good with me. I would say for the most part, we did not generally agree. She definitely was not a communist. She was, I would say, an anti-communist. She really appears to me to despise communism. She regards herself as a communitarian of sorts, although I don't think that she is exactly a responsive communitarian, which is a philosophy developed by Amitai Etzioni, who was also a sociologist and a right-winger, although I think he would probably reject that characterization. He is also one of the founders of third way thinking, along with Anthony Giddens, who coincidentally or not is also a sociologist. He is also a member of the House of Lords in the UK. Critique is necessary. It is necessary for being a scholar. If one truly desires to be a scholar, one must look for, one must love critique, whether it is from oneself or whether it is from others. Without critique, one stays in one place and does not move beyond it. It was because of critique that I went from communist tendency to communist tendency, ending up in Maoism-Third Worldism. It was also, sadly, because of critique that I left Maoism-Third Worldism and became a third campist. But again, it was because of further critique that I left third campism and went back into Maoism-Third Worldism. Critique is what keeps us alive. And I mean that literally, alive in an intellectual sense. Without critique, one is essentially dead. One is a walking corpse. One might as well not even have the breath of life, in my opinion. Why be alive if one is afraid of being challenged, if one walks away from challenges? And yet, it is all too common these days, and perhaps always, I don't know, for people to want to surround themselves exclusively with people who agree with them. In other words, with an echo chamber. Echo chambers may be comfortable. They may cause less stress, but there is nothing wrong with stress. Stress is good. Now, when I say stress is good, I don't mean panic. I don't mean fear. I mean mental stress, the kind of stress that leads one to reconsider one's ideas. That is called self-critique, or as many Marxists call it, including me, self-crit. I try to engage in self-crit all the time. It is something that I love. I enjoy doing it. I would not have it any other way. I think that to my dying day, I will always long for self-crit. Again, as I said in my previous episode, the one thing above all that I regret about retiring from being a full-time academic is the loss of that kind of stimulation from being surrounded by a community of scholars. I no longer have that. And so if I want to find a community of scholars, I need to search for it, basically online, because I don't know where physically I can find a community of scholars, especially where I live, especially. Now, maybe I could, but do I have the energy to go out and try to seek out people who might be able to provide me with criticism, with critique? No, I don't. Nor do I think that in these days of Zoom, in these days of YouTube or Twitter or Facebook or Twitch or even TikTok, that it is necessary. And so I seek out critique mostly online. Mostly online. Sometimes what I get when I seek out critique from the wrong people is an attack. Critique is not attack. They are entirely different things because an attack is emotional. It is personal. It is, in the sense of logical fallacies, ad hominem. When you attack the person rather than attacking the idea, you are engaging in an ad hominem fallacy. Many people do not know the difference, but there is a big difference. For example, argumentation. I know what an argument is in a technical sense. I have been a moderator for technical debates, for formal debates. I have been a judge for formal debates. And so in that situation, I have had to score points for people and make a decision as to who won the debate. Making an ad hominem comment is an instant disqualification. In other words, once one has made that ad hominem comment, one has automatically lost the debate. And yet, in common parlance, people think of making ad hominem comments as debates, but they are not. I used to be a super admin, a super administrator in a room on the Pal Talk chat service called The Great Debate. But sadly, I never saw a debate in that room. And I worked in that room for about a decade. Not once did I ever see a true debate. And for that reason, even when I was asked to debate somebody, I said, no, thank you. Often, the response back was, are you afraid? No, I'm not afraid. I just would prefer not to do that. I did not want to get into a fight with somebody. to contend with somebody. Contention is not argumentation. But sadly, especially online these days, many people, confuse contention with an actual debate. I will give you an example. Calvinist presuppositional apologetics. If you don't know what presuppositionalism is, look it up, Google it. Look for a video on it on YouTube. There are plenty of them. There are many people who developed presuppositionalism. Chief among them is Cornelius Van Til. His last name is two words, V-A-N and T-I-L. You can find loads of things about him. He was the master of logical fallacies. But since the majority of people do not know how to engage in a logical discussion, they easily succumb to presuppositional apologetics, which is an attempt to promote Calvinism or Reformed theology. Once on YouTube, I came into contact with one of the, as far as I know, I was told, the leading proponents of presuppositionalism online. And I did not know that he was that at the time. I found out later. He started engaging in presuppositionalism with me. I defeated him with one simple sentence. I don't exactly remember what that sentence was, but it is extremely simple to defeat a person who engages in presuppositionalism. Essentially, what a presuppositional apologist believes is that only Calvinism has the correct presuppositions. And therefore, if you are not a Calvinist, the presuppositions you use are faulty by design and by default. Now, is that true? No, of course that's not true. In reality, winning a debate, which is basically what presuppositionalists, I guess they think they are doing that, although they are doing a really poor job of it. But winning a genuine debate has nothing to do with truth. One can lose a debate, but still be correct. Winning a debate has nothing to do with whether one is right or wrong, whatever right and wrong might mean. For example, you might have a debate between a person who accepts evolution, the modern synthesis of evolution, and a creationist or a proponent of intelligent design, which is simply a modernized form of creationism developed by the Discovery Institute at discovery.org. And if that creationist or intelligent design proponent is a better debater, that person might win the debate. Now, does that mean that that person is correct, is truthful? No. It simply means that the person is a better debater. But to a presuppositionalist, because they think that they can win debates more readily, and I guess in their way, in kind of a twisted way, they can, although they are not really engaging in debates, they are simply engaged in a kind of twisted rationality based on their own assumptions, which for anybody who knows the rules, the basic rules of critical thinking, are extraordinarily easy to defeat, just as I defeated that guy on YouTube with one sentence. And what happened? He was surrounded, apparently, by a number of friends, virtually surrounded in a room, I guess. And they all said to him, "What's wrong with you? You seem to have lost it." And this guy did not know what to say. He was totally lost. My guess is that that was the first time that he was ever defeated, because most people have no knowledge of logic, have no knowledge of the idea of what is a true debate. Anybody who knows the basic concept of what debate is and doesn't think that debate is fighting or contending or using logical fallacies like the fallacy of ad hominem, anybody like that can easily beat a presuppositionalist in one sentence, easily, because it is the most foolish approach that I can imagine that has ever been invented. Now, it works with some people, but the problem is that this guy was using his presuppositionalism with a guy with a Ph.D. Now, I am not bragging, but the fact that I have a Ph.D. means that I have some credentials, means that I have some degree of training in how to think. You can't get a Ph.D. if you don't know how to think well. And so when somebody approaches a Ph.D., they cannot justifiably expect to talk to that person the same way they would talk to the average individual. And my only assumption can be that this guy has never engaged with a Ph.D. before. Well, how many Ph.D.s would engage with a presuppositionalist? Not that many. I mean, I did not seek that guy out. He came to me. He came to me. He was responding to a posting I made on YouTube. And he and his friends, I assume, thought they could easily beat me, defeat me. Instead, the opposite happened. They were defeated themselves. What I hope happened, of course, I don't know this, is that this guy went to someone who has more knowledge of theology, because theology is not the same as apologetics. The two are entirely different. But if he went to someone who was a true theologian or a true philosopher and explained what happened and said, "What's wrong? Why did I lose?" Well, any intelligent person, anybody who with an education in theology or philosophy or social theory, like myself, could have told him, you cannot use presuppositionalism on a PhD. Now, that might really upset the person. It might even, I suspect, cause that person to lose faith, because I know a lot of presuppositionalists who base their faith in Calvinism on their ability to engage in presuppositionalism. And they assume that because they have not lost any of their supposed debates, pseudo debates with other people, that therefore Calvinism is correct. Whereas the reality is that they are simply dealing with a person who has not been trained how to think on an academic level. And so this person came to the wrong person, or maybe the right person. I hope that the person learned something from me defeating him in one sentence. I hope. I don't know that, but I hope. Maybe this person reconsidered his Calvinism. Now, I don't want to attack Calvinism. I don't like Calvinism. I don't like the doctrine of double election, whereby God predestines people to go to either heaven or hell. To me, what kind of God would do that? If I thought that a God did that, actually created people to go to hell, which is what most Calvinists actually believe, at least those who haven't watered down their Calvinism, and there are some who have done that, then I would literally start an anti-God movement. or something like that. I certainly could not believe in God, meaning if I truly believed, and if obviously this is hypothetical, that God sent people to hell, created people for the express purpose of sending them to hell. Not only would I not believe in God, I would be opposed to God. I would become an enemy of God. And that is immensely sad for me to say as somebody who deeply loves God. But under those circumstances, I would not be loving God. I would be loving a creature of my own imagination, because God would never predestine a person to go to hell. That is simply inconceivable to me. And so, in order to engage in critique, one needs to engage in logic. In order to engage in logic, one needs to have a sense of what is rational and what is irrational. And therefore, the best thing that one can do is to engage in formal debates and to stay away from so-called debates online, because I have almost never seen an online debate that was done correctly. Most people think that a debate is fighting. The person who talks the loudest, the person who yells the most, the person who attacks the other person with the greatest degree of ferocity is the individual who won the supposed debate, whereas precisely the opposite is true. In other words, again, in a formal debate, behaving that way would mean an instant loss. Not simply a loss in points, but an instant loss. Other things might lead to a loss in points, but attacking somebody, attacking a fellow debater, personally, not attacking their ideas, but attacking that person as an individual, would literally mean an instant loss. And sadly, the majority of people who think they are engaging in debates are not engaging in debates at all. To me, as a Maoist third worldist, that is immensely important. The world needs, in my view, Maoism-Third worldism. And yet, the majority of communists are not third worldists. They are first worldists. Not all third worldists are Maoists. There are a variety of different types of third worldism. I outlined them in a podcast I made, I think, about 6 months ago. So you can find that if you scroll up far enough, what that podcast episode was. But in any event, since most people who are commies are first worldists, not third worldists, in my view, they are leading people down a track to nowhere, a road to nowhere, or I guess you could say a dead end. Because first worldism in the present climate of the world will simply not work. There is no way to succeed in establishing communism in the first world. If you have successfully, if I have successfully, as a Maoist third worldist, learned how to critique myself and learned how to critique others and been brutally honest with myself, I always attempt to be brutally honest with myself, then nothing can shake me. And I can accept criticism without being moved, maybe being accepting of what they say, saying thank you for teaching me that, which would in itself most likely startle the other person, but then continue. Complimenting a person does not lose you points in a debate. Attacking a person makes you lose a debate. It is always a good thing to be prepared to attack your opponent in a debate. For the time being, this has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.